Alex Pereira is something else, man. He just put on that kind of performance while injured, or in his training camp he was injured. He was sick. He had visa issues. He was going to pull out of the card. Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena was going to be the main event. He was on antibiotics, fought in elevation, and still looked that good. This guy's just different. And he did say it was the worst training camp he's ever had. So this is what Alex Pereira said. Quote, "The fight was really tough, but only my team knows how tough the camp was. I went through a lot of stuff that no one really knows about. I was in Brazil about a month ago. I had some problems with my visa and was going to go over to consulate every single day trying to see if my passport was ready to be picked up. Finally made it back to the US, spent about a week in Connecticut, and been here for 3 weeks. In the meantime, I was on antibiotics, had a fever, a bad throat, and a lot of things happened. When I was in Brazil, I hurt my rib. It was an injury that I had about a year ago, and that came back. So that was something that I was dealing with. And when I came here, my throat was still bad, went to the doctor, and was put on another round of antibiotics. I even recorded a video at the time that I might show, but I went through a lot. Also, the ligament in my toe that was hurt for UFC 300, that came back. So there was a lot of things that I went through. It was a tough fight, but it was a tough lead up to the fight, and that's why I'm actually really proud of myself in this moment." Unquote. That is ridiculous. This guy had an injured rib. Kevin Holland lost his fight against Roman Dolidze with a hurt rib. Imagine going through training camp with an injured rib, then going into the fight and performing that well. And he had the same torn ligament from when he fought Jamal Hill back in UFC 300. And this guy's been fighting often. He fought at UFC 303 against Yuri Prohaska and now fought at UFC 307 against Khalil Rountree. They may have something to do with his injuries for that fight. Maybe he hasn't been giving himself enough time to rest those injuries. Right, 3 title defenses a year is amazing, and every champion should do that. But he's defending his title 3 times in just over 5 months. If Alex fought in January and also in December, which would be like spreading out his fights evenly, right? He would have 5 title fights in a year. And him talking about being sick with a fever and he may have had a strep throat, he was actually coughing in between rounds. You can see and hear him coughing on the stool. Bro was sick during the fight, maybe still on antibiotics, and he outlasted Khalil Rountree. He looked better in the 4th round at high elevation. These guys were fighting at Salt Lake City, which gasses you out if you do any kind of physical activity. These guys were fighting. Khalil Rountree started gassing out before Alex Pereira did, and Rountree's gas tank looked better than ever. This is the same Alex that was fatiguing when he fought Jan Blachowicz in a 3-round fight, and he looked that good in the 4th round after getting rocked too, recovering from that shot, eating a head kick. This guy's a special fighter, man, unlike we've ever seen. Absolutely insane. He was going to pull out too. So it says here, Daniel Cormier reveals that the Alex Pereira camp let the UFC know that they may pull out of UFC 307 before heading to Salt Lake City. This would have resulted in Pennington versus Pena being the main event. Quote, the UFC said to him, "That would suck, but let us know how it goes. We have 2 title fights. We'll elevate one if that's what we need to do." Unquote. Bro, if Alex Pereira was just a normal human, he would have pulled out and we would have had Rocky versus Juliana as the main event, which ended up being a robbery win for Juliana Pena. And honestly, if Alex pulled out, it would have been very understandable. Injured, visa issues, he's sick, he's been fighting often. Of course, if he wanted to pull out, everybody would understand that. But he still went in there to keep UFC 307 intact and put on one of the best performances of his entire career. Like I said before, that 4th round was an Alex Pereira better than any other. I've never seen him fight that well in that 4th round against Khalil Rountree. And Alex didn't even have an optimal training camp either. Imagine UFC 307 ending with a robbery of the main event and a robbery of the co-main event, which would have been Jose Aldo versus Mario Bautista. That probably would have been the worst main event and co-main event in UFC history if Alex pulled out. And because of the training camp and the fight, Alex is going to relax and not fight for a while, but when he says stuff like that, it usually means 7 months later he'll have another fight. His time off in the sport is as long as other champions are fighting often. Bro, can you imagine if the UFC didn't have Alex for 2024? He's 100% the fighter of the year. I know if Ilia Topuria knocks out Max Holloway in spectacular fashion, would be huge for him, right? But 3 title defenses a year, saving fight cards, and fighting injured and sick, and still looking better than ever. You have to give the fighter of the year to Alex Pereira. It's wrapped up. Nobody beats Alex this year. Crazy, man. And Mario Bautista responded to the whole Jose Aldo fight and what Conor McGregor had to say. Conor wasn't saying anything crazy. He pretty much was saying that a fighter shouldn't be able to win by just holding the opponent up against the fence, which I 100% agree with. So this is what Conor said. Quote, Rogan said the judges weren't even looking. That was Jose's story. BS decision. He has just said he was shooting in just to hold him against the fence. That's not good enough. Referees need to step in here. The sport is the fan sport. Remember this and act accordingly, referees. Going forward, thank you. Nothing crazy. I think everybody agrees with that. One of the referees on the fight card earlier was separating like every single clinch and grappling positions, but in the Jose Aldo fight, no. One time, Mario Bautista was separated from Jose Aldo, and then he immediately shot in again and was able to hold Aldo against the fence. If a fighter is getting separated and they shoot another takedown immediately just to stall out the fight, that should get separated again, and there has to be like some kind of point deduction for stalling. If you can win a fight by not fighting the opponent, why wouldn't every fighter do that? It's the best way to win for them. They don't hurt their own hands throwing punches, they don't get hit, and that's not the sport that people want to watch. This is not the fans complaining about a certain part of the scoring system. The scoring system actually favors Aldo winning that fight. It's actually hurting the sport. But then Mario Bautista responded to Conor McGregor and talked about his fight with Aldo. And it seems like he doesn't really care. He doesn't care to please the fans. He doesn't care about anything other than the fans booing him or cheering him. It's that whole thing where as long as the fans aren't ignoring the fighter, any noise from the fans is good for them. And that's kind of how Bautista's looking at it. So this is what Bautista had to say about Conor. Quote, Conor can kiss my, and he can fight whenever he's supposed to. Take the fight against Chandler. Shut up. The performance is what it is. Had to do what I had to do. I got cut in the second round. I got hit with something pretty good. I was able to drive him through the fence. He has good takedown defense, but he cannot get off the cage. That's not my fault, you know? If that was me, I'm able to circle off the cage. So whatever the crowd thinks, whatever everyone thinks, I mean, that's on him. He wasn't getting off the fence. I'm not going to let him off the fence. And I tried to take him down. He's good right there. And like you said, that's something Merab did. And now look at him. He's the champ. I thought I did enough. Striking-wise, he was getting after a little bit, but like I said, he just gave up a lot of time on the cage. So that's on him. We'll see who comes up. I was thinking Corey Sandhagen next, but he's kind of coming off a loss. I'm a 7 in a row now. Someone that's been calling out O'Malley, and O'Malley just lost. So if Henry Cejudo wants to fight, we could do that too. Unquote. He's saying he's too good to fight Corey Sandhagen. Yo, he might be just playing this whole heel at this point. There's no way he just said that. So instead he wants to fight Henry Cejudo, but Henry Cejudo's coming off a loss too. He said that Corey's coming off a loss. I have 7 wins in a row, so he should pretty much fight O'Malley. If Henry Cejudo wants to fight, we could fight then too. He wants the easier fight, and he'd probably beat Henry Cejudo right now. Like, come on, dude. I think he should fight like Rob Font or something like that, and give Jose Aldo the Henry Cejudo fight because he beat Mario Bautista. And Bautista's talking about control time against the fence. It's not scored. He said that Aldo gave too much time up against the fence when it doesn't matter, or at least it shouldn't matter. And he's alluding that he got hurt in the second round. He said he got hit by something pretty good and had a laceration. But the fact that he's saying, nah, I beat him that way because that's how I was gonna win the fight, and Merab did it too, and look, he's the champ, so he's like following his example. Bro, that is crazy. If Merab beating Jose Aldo like that is giving other fighters the same kind of game plan, stall out fights to win, but isn't that kind of crazy? The current bantamweight champion, rising competitors like Mario Bautista, who's technically on a 7-win streak now, the only way that they could beat a washed, overhill Jose Aldo, who retired not too long ago and came back to fight, the only way they could beat this guy is by stopping him from fighting, stalling out the fight long enough to not take enough damage. Jose Aldo is so good and dangerous that they don't even want to fight him while they're in the cage with him. Crazy, man. It does speak to the greatness of Aldo that these fighters in their prime, even the champion right now, had to fight Aldo that way, because any other approach to the fight would have been them losing the fight. So that does show how good Aldo actually is, even still after his comeback. So make sure to give the video a like, guys. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.